Or good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when this finds you. Just want to talk a little bit today about a subject area. And one of my sisters actually inspired this video. She called me after getting out of church and asked me had I seen a video of a white woman. I think she might be even be a school teacher, saying that black parents should not waste their time reading to their children like white parents. She said white parents should continue to read to their children, and black parents needed to spend and focus their energy, time, and effort on keeping their children focused on oppression and racism. Now, look at that thought process. She wants us as black people to not educate our children, but she thinks it's okay for whites to continue to educate their children. She think it's okay for the white parent to continue to build a bonding relationship with their children, but she wants black parents to focus on oppression and racism. Now, this is me. It seems to me that they've been running that agenda and playbook for years. You know, how long have we as a people been focused on racism and oppression while every other culture is focusing on family, business ownership, economics, entrepreneurship, community building, generational wealth, and the future? And you get the idea. So the entire time, each culture has been teaching their children about those areas. We as blacks have been focusing on racism, oppression, injustice, politics, and discrimination. Now, am I saying those things aren't important? Not at all. Well, I'll be honest with you. Politics actually needs to drop to the bottom of where our energy is being spent. That plan hasn't worked for us yet. We should be treated fairly. We should be treated justly. We shouldn't be discriminated against in hiring and in public spaces. We shouldn't be mistreated because of our skin color. Now, think about this though. Many Asian Indians are darker skinned. Why aren't they treated with the same disdain as black Americans? Darker skinned people from different countries in Africa are not treated the same way as black Americans. Blacks from places like Panama are darker skinned, but they're not mistreated like blacks born here in America. So, why is only one group of blacks treated so poorly around the world? Now, I'm not going to get into that in this video, but I've told you why in many of my other videos. And you can go back and, get some of that information. Look at the video I did on Jacob, and just to get you a pretty good idea. But they treat us poorly. I've seen people from other cultures look upon black Americans with disdain. And, they treat us as if we have nothing to offer to society. No one wants to have a conversation about all of the black ideas and inventions that were stolen from blacks by white people. Nobody wants to talk about how whites went over into Africa and plundered the gold mines and the diamond mines and the emerald mines. Nobody wants to talk about that. See, nobody wants to talk about all of the music stolen from black people by whites. Speaking of, ideas and inventions, I have a cousin who was born in 1887. And she created a lot of artwork. She was never paid for her artwork. But white people took all her art, put it within their company, and they're still making profits off of her work that she created back in 1937 and beyond. And like I said, she was born on a plantation in 1887 in Louisiana. And she picked up her first uh, paint around 1937, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, but the company is still making money and marketing her paintings on different products that they sell, but she never received anything from that. But we want to talk about fairness in this country. No one wants to talk about all of the thriving black communities we once had that were destroyed by whites because of jealousy. No one wants to talk about how more white than black men are leaving their families at unprecedented rates now. Yeah, you have more white men stepping away and leaving their families and their wives and their children behind than you do black men. But see, you never get painted positive black images in society of black men. All whites want to do is talk about the criminal element in black America. As if that's the only criminal element in society, in America, and around the world as well. Why don't other criminals get similar airtime as black people? They always want to talk about blacks commit most of the crime. Blacks commit most of the crime. Blacks commit most of the crime that get caught. Blacks commit most of the crime that gets prosecuted. See, that's what we're not talking about. I'm gonna do another video where I'm gonna talk about some of these issues where black men have been unjustly targeted, unjustly imprisoned, and unjustly treated over the years, and how many years these men have locked up. But I'm not gonna do that in this one. But see, blacks get the focus on all the negativity, but we don't want to talk about that. When a white guy commits a crime, society doesn't look at all white males the same way as that one white guy. Asian guy commits a crime, society doesn't look at all Asian guys that way. Black guy commits a crime, everybody in society is crossing their eyes at us now. See, there is an element of black folks in this country who are handpicked by the system to make sure we as a people remain focused on grievances and grievances only. These black folks, believe it or not, and I know y'all really want to believe it, but you don't want to believe it. Because now you have to start questioning the people you look up to and the people you hang out with, the people you associate with, the people you call friend, even some of your family members. There's a guy, real famous actor. Y'all know him, Fast and the Furious guy. And we know this couple, and one of the members of the couple was related to him, and all they wanted to do was talk about him, talk about him, talk about him. you know but that's just my personal experience. But these black folks are chosen for politics. They're chosen for news channels. They're actually chosen for your TV shows and movies. They're chosen to lead your black fraternities and black sororities, and believe it or not, they're chosen to lead your churches. Can I let you in on a little secret? The system always choose the ones that have the lowest self-esteem to lead us. They choose the ones whose self-esteem is so low that they can only get and feel accomplished by lording power over other black people. They don't care about lording power over any other culture. They just want to have power over other blacks. The system chooses the ones who would have been the overseers for master during slavery. Now, let me ask a question. With all of the wealth building principles and examples in the Bible, why aren't any of your pastors teaching us these things about money? Abraham was wealthy. Jacob was wealthy. Isaac was wealthy. Solomon was wealthy. But we don't hear black preachers or pastors talking about wealth. Anytime you hear most of your black preachers and pastors talking about wealth is always in a negative connotation. Listen to it. I guarantee you. And if you have a black pastor that's talking about wealth creation from a biblical perspective, the rest of the pastoral body will put that pastor down. Don't take my word for it. Check it out for yourself. They'll put that pastor down. But then if you say something about a pastor or a preacher, these same Negro pastors will tell you, don't sit there and talk bad about our brother. Well, why don't they take their own advice when another brother is using the same Bible to tell people about wealth creation? Now, I'm not talking about the dudes with the prosperity gospel. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the dudes who are teaching about how to obtain wealth the proper way, and they're not fleecing people to do it. I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about those. I'm not talking about these guys who, keep sowing into me, keep sowing into me, keep sowing into me. But these same guys who talk bad about the other guys teaching about wealth creation have no problem getting up every Sunday in their pulpits begging for your money. See, the only wealth building many of these black pastors talk about is when it comes to building wealth of the church. They will Malachi 3 you to death. They beg for money all the time, but then want you to focus on the scripture that you can't serve God and money. Well, I'm going to ask this question again because I've asked it on previous videos. Why do they get paid for preaching? In the Bible, the only time a teacher was paid is when he was traveling out of town. And Paul was very clear on that. Paul said, I worked with my own hands to care for me and the men who were with me. When the 12 went out with the Messiah, they were taken care of on their own until he said, now it's time for y'all to stand on your own. But he was still telling them, take care of yourself. Don't fleece the people that you're supposed to be helping. See, black folks will never build wealth following the teachings of black pastors and preachers. Have you ever read Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18? What does Romans 13 and 8 say? See, the Bible in Romans says to owe no man anything except to love one another. But we have a lot of pastors out here blessing us for going into debt for financing a new home. See, if man were following biblical principles, he would eliminate debt after 7 years. Now make it make sense. See, looking back through our history as a people, after slavery had ended, we actually started to flourish greatly in our communities. We started to flourish in our schools, in our families, in our business endeavors. And along comes W.E.B. Du Bois, handpicked by the system to redirect our efforts. He told us we needed to stop building these minute businesses and focus our attention on getting hired in white corporations because they were larger. They were more profitable. They were more sustainable. He was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. William Monroe Trotter was a member of Phi Beta Kappa. Isn't it amazing that the Niagara movement didn't survive, but its members were engulfed by the NAACP, and then all of a sudden the NAACP thrived? Why do you think the Niagara movement failed? See, I'm going to tell you why the Niagara movement failed, in my opinion, based on everything I've studied. It failed because the blacks who were thriving in business, who were thriving in industry, who were thriving entrepreneurs, had no time to focus on grievances and victimization. The blacks who were creating something were not trying to redirect their energies to fighting against discrimination. You see, as blacks, we have a self-image and self-esteem problem that many feel only whites can help us solve. See, the Niagara movement was founded by blacks with a focus on grievances. It failed for the reason I stated. The NAACP was formed by whites with a focus on black grievances, and it thrived. Now, how does that work? How in the hell do whites know what it's like to be oppressed as a black person? Why did it thrive? Because all of a sudden, white people got involved and said they were on our side to address the mistreatment that their own ancestors had historically done to us. Really? We fell for that? It was their people who enslaved our ancestors. It was their people who stole our identity. And it was them who said they wanted to help us. You can't make this stuff up. They started these organizations to make sure we would never grow and expand economically. You see, Booker T. Washington had already proven that if you produce a good or service of quality, all people will come to you to buy it. A couple of decades later, after W.E.B. Du Bois and them got with the NAACP, here comes James Weldon Johnson, at the Democratic Convention. And he told us we needed to focus all of our energy on politics. Johnson was a member of Phi Beta Sigma. In spite of being locked out of unions and the protections afforded to white workers, in spite of being largely discriminated against in hiring practices on jobs, contrary to what history has taught, we were still thriving greatly as a people during those eras. And here comes the boom, the civil rights movement. MLK was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha and a preacher. Bayard Rustin was a member of Omega Psi Phi. Roy Wilkins was a member of Omega Psi Phi. Jesse Jackson is a member of Omega Psi Phi. Andrew Young was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. Emmett Ashford, who was the first black major league umpire, was a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. And I threw that in there, just to let y'all know, when I tell you the first something has always got to be a member of something. Dorothy Height was a member of Delta Sigma Theta. September Poinsett Clark was a member of Gamma Xi Omega, which was a chapter of the AKAs. Ella Baker was very active in the NAACP. See, every time we have a degree of economic success, here comes some black hand-picked Negro to redirect our efforts and energy away from economic independence. I don't care if you like any of the names I mentioned. They harmed us. I call the civil rights movement the boom because we've never recovered from that derailment. And as I always state, don't take my word for anything. Research it for yourself and tell me what you come up with. Please leave it in the comment section. Tell me what you come up with. Can we point right today to any thriving black communities since the Civil Rights Act was signed? Yeah, you got little small neighborhoods that are thriving, but we don't have any thriving communities anymore. See, neighborhood and community ain't the same thing. Have we built any universities since the Civil Rights Act was signed? Have our family units gotten better or worse since the Civil Rights Act was signed? Even with the Civil Rights Act supposedly making things equal, why did we still need affirmative action? Right after the Civil Rights Movement came out, explosion of black politicians. And they were so sophisticated in their desire to keep us in perpetual bondage and victimization that they created the Congressional Black Caucus. Now, I want you to think about something. Of all the names I mentioned, all those people I mentioned that were part of organizations, frats and sororities, how many of them had built a thriving business or endeavor? Not a one of them. Now, we're not talking about the grievance organizations like the SNCC, they call it the SNCC, things like that, because I believe Dorothy Height, was very instrumental in that as well. See, the NAACP wasn't founded by black people. The National Urban League was not founded by black people. The Civil Rights Movement was not started by black people. But isn't it amazing that when we think of black organizations, the two we hear the most about are the NAACP and the Urban League, but we don't hear much about the National Negro Business League or the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Why do we hear about the ones started by whites, but we hardly ever hear about the ones with a black foundation? So back to what I started out with. The white woman said we should remain focused on grievances, while other cultures focus on economics, family bonding, generational wealth, community building, wealth building, you know. And then if we don't get in line with the plan, then the system is going to promote some blackface to take up the mantle and lead us in a direction they want us to go. Talk to you later.